Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Mark Givler, joined as always by Chip Minnick. It's the Rivalry Week edition of the podcast. It's here. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so we're less than 48 hours away from rivalry games kicking off. It's a great weekend around the country. Lots of big games are going to impact the playoff race. A few Big Ten games that I think are going to impact the playoff race. I think it's more than just one here, and we'll kind of get into that here in a minute. But really nice slate, of course, with the rivalry week. A lot of close-ish lines, not a lot of heavy favorites, one or two games that are going to be like that, but a lot of games that we expect will be very competitive in the Big Ten this weekend. And the ones that don't even impact the playoff situation, we're going to have games that, impact bowl situations and maybe coaching statuses going into the offseason, et cetera. So a lot to get into. So let's run down the list, Chip. Good game to kick everything off for the Big Ten is 12 p.m. Noon CBS on Friday. We got Iowa at Nebraska. Both teams are 7-4. Iowa's 5-3 in the Big Ten. Nebraska's 4-4 in the Big Ten. Iowa's a 6.5-point favorite. I would say teams are probably coming in. Iowa's probably coming in the more confident team. Nebraska, not a very good showing against Penn State. You got Iowa coming in off a really kind of miracle comeback there against Michigan State, kind of exercising their close game demons this year. But again, Iowa 6.5-point favorite. That sounds about right. What do you think about this game, Chip?
I agree with you, Mark. I think as it gets closer and closer, like another X factor, and he's not going to be on the field, but there are starting to be rumblings and rumors of things going on with Dylan Raiola that I think could have an impact on Nebraska. Now, keep in mind, I think TJ Lateef has done a solid job filling in for Raiola, but I agree with you. I think the momentum is certainly on Iowa's side. Nebraska's got the home field, but I think Iowa, they just seem to be, even with the miracle against Michigan State last week, I just think Iowa's probably just a better all-around team, and I think just probably in a better mental state. So I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes in a close one, as usual. Like it usually comes down to like the final play or the final few minutes.
Yeah, they're either going to make the kick or have the kick made on them.
Yes, you got it.
So I've got Iowa as well. The Raiola stuff's interesting. His younger brother, Dayton, decommitted last week from Nebraska, which was immediate alarm bells because this is not a kid who had like any offers anywhere near the caliber of Nebraska. This is a kid who probably will go down a rung or two on the ladder, would be my guess, unless we have some interesting transfer situation this offseason where it's a package deal. But so that kind of set off some interesting alarms, and obviously we'll keep an eye on that here in the coming weeks probably. But yeah, I've got Iowa in a close one as well. I just think I think they're playing better football right now, probably healthier, and I think the way Nebraska plays offense, especially without Raiola now with Lateef, I think Emmett Johnson's been so good this year. But I just think it's hard to just line up and pound Iowa and not have like a dynamic passing game to go with it, or and I just don't know that Nebraska is going to be able to muster up the balance on offense to pull this one out. But I do think it'll be close, and it'll probably be low scoring. It'll be your typical Iowa game, 21-17 or something like that. And I've got the Hawkeyes winning. So. All right, but that is not all on Friday. Friday night, 7:30 p.m. on NBC. Indiana at Purdue. Of course, Indiana is undefeated, number 2 in the country. Purdue 2-9, 0-8 in the Big Ten. Still looking for that first Big Ten win. Indiana's a 4-touchdown favorite. It's not going to happen for Barry Odom this year, is it?
No, it's not. And I think as I say this, stammering and smiling, I think if I was a Purdue fan, I could see where the frustration is certainly understandable, but I would also try to be as objective, as difficult as it would be, to compare and contrast just the effort and just the overall play of this year's Purdue team versus last year. And yes, I think Indiana is going to cover the spread. And I know it's very disappointing to go into the offseason if you're a Purdue fan, being winless within the Big Ten. But I really do believe Purdue is pointed in the right direction. I think another solid transfer portal, and recruiting is the name of the game, but transfer portal is the immediate upkeep, if you will, the immediate impact that I think that the Boilermakers they can probably get themselves into bowl game contention next season if they do it right. But yeah, I think Indiana they are just playing with an intensity that Kurt Cignetti has just kind of a take no prisoners mentality, and I think the Hoosiers are going to really let them have it on Friday night for a national television audience.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things where 2-10, 0-9 in the Big Ten is going to look super ugly on paper. When I look at last year's Purdue team compared to this year's Purdue team, I think Odom has done such a much better job than his predecessor. This Purdue team was more competitive this year with way less talent. I mean, they lost NFL guys to the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they really have NFL guys on this team right now. Maybe one. I mean, but like you lose Max Clare, Dylan Tiedemann, like these are impact players on national title contending teams that walked out the door this offseason. And you got the remnants of that to play harder than they got out of their team last year. So it's probably not going to be much of a consolation for Purdue fans who are like probably just over this stretch run of seasons that they've had. But it's unbelievable how much better I thought they played this year, yet the record isn't really going to indicate that. But yeah, I've got Indiana big. I don't see this being particularly competitive, and Indiana's just rolling right now. So big noon on Fox, the game, Ohio State at Michigan. Of course, Ohio State is undefeated, number 1, Michigan 9-2, number 15, 7-1 in the Big Ten. Obviously, Chip, if Michigan wins, they are in the playoff, correct? Even though they're outside looking in right now, they win this, they're in, right?
Oh yeah. I think the committee kind of laid that out by the way that Michigan their rise up the rankings that were released on Tuesday evening. So yeah, Michigan knows, all right, if they pull off the upset against Ohio State, that they're in the college football playoff. Ohio State knows that they're in the college football playoff, and that it's just a different mentality though than the NFL, where like, oh, let's rest our starters and get ready for the NFL playoffs. It's like, no, if you're Ohio State losing 4 straight, you want to win this game. I have Ohio State winning. I do think it's going to be a stereotypical Ohio State-Michigan game. It's going to be very physical. It's going to be close fought. I do see Ohio State in the fourth quarter being able to pull away and win the game. I know that the weather forecast, as we're recording this, I just was looking at it like the probable snow, and it's going to be cold, which would kind of lead you to think, okay, well, that favors Michigan. But the reality is, I think, Ohio State, they can run the ball. It's just not, all right, let's not try and, do something that would make Coach Hayes proud. We're not going to, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You can run the ball other ways, and I think that they can still pass the ball effectively, do enough. Whereas conversely, I think with Michigan, they're pretty much, I'm not saying that they can't pass, but I haven't seen enough of Bryce Underwood beyond, I realize that, he's got a lot of raw talent, and I definitely think he's going to be, developing into a tremendous player. But I think if you shut down the Michigan run game, they're in big trouble. So I'm going to give it to the Buckeyes, and I think it's going to be a great game as usual.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to just line up and run on this Ohio State defense. And so I think there's certainly years past, I think like the CJ Stroud teams that weren't very good defensively, where this would be really upsetting if you're an Ohio State fan, this weather forecast, where it's like, okay, you're going to hinder our high-powered passing game. Oh, and by the way, our defense is just okay at best. Like, that's not great. I think it's the opposite this time. I think, first of all, they can run the ball. But I just think it's going to be so hard to get points on this defense, and bad weather is only going to make that worse. So I've got Ohio State in a close one. Ryan Day exercises the demons. I think Ohio State will win the turnover battle. I think they'll force a turnover, key turnover too. The things that Michigan has kind of done the last few years to win these games, I think Ohio State will do them this year and come out of there with a low-scoring, close win, which will probably eliminate Michigan from the playoff picture. But it'll be interesting. And, of course, the winner of this game is going to Indianapolis, right?
You got it.
So a spot in Indianapolis awaits the winner of that game as well. So that will be, of course, on everyone's. And the Big Ten was pretty smart about this. It's the only noon game on Saturday in the Big Ten.
I mean, I'll say this much. Even the Big Ten network. I mean, you're talking about the flagship. You have like a person like Howard Griffith who played at Illinois. I mean, he can barely contain himself, talking, about, he's like, I just can't wait for this game. And he played at Illinois, so it's not just Ohio State people or Michigan people that are hyping this game up. I think the anticipation is there. I would say I'm not, maybe it's just kind of, more on the historical sense for me. I will say, I think the hype for this doesn't compare to, scary to think about almost 20 years ago. The 2006 game when it was 1 versus 2, that one, I think, and again, the circumstances were different. I mean, that was before the Big Ten expanded, obviously, and the Big Ten network even came into existence and all those kind of things. But I do think that, like in today's day and age where, like you said, like exercising the demons of a 4-year losing streak, pretty much Michigan knows if they get in, that they're in the college football playoff. I think that there's a lot of reasons to tune into this game, even if you're not necessarily an Ohio State or Michigan fan.
All right, call your shot here. Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, both play, both do not play, one plays.
I'm going to say one plays, and that's going to be Jeremiah Smith. It wouldn't surprise me if Carnell Tate does play. Everything that I'm hearing, and when I say I'm hearing it, or I should say reading, is on like social media. So it's like, I wouldn't even say take it with a grain of salt. I would say take whatever Chip Minnick says without any salt, because I'm really not in the know. But I'm gonna try and do the strategy here. If I'm Jeremiah Smith, and even if I'm not at 100% and I'm lined up, what do you think the Michigan defense is going to do? They're going to give you double coverage. They're going to try to take you out of the game, which if you're Ohio State and Ryan Day, you're like, okay, that singles up. So that's my rationale, is I'm thinking that Jeremiah Smith, even at less than 100%, everything, I'm just going off the reason why I'm just to kind of a little bit deeper on my rationale here. Jeremiah Smith was on Caleb Downs' podcast, and he said he should be good to go. So that's kind of where I'm thinking with that. Like with Carnell Tate, it might be a little bit more serious. It might be a little more precautionary. So I'm just saying that I think if Jeremiah Smith can play a half, Ohio State can get a lead, put Michigan kind of in a difficult strategic position and not being able to throw the ball to get back into the game. That's why I'm thinking Jeremiah Smith is going to have an impact on this game, even if he doesn't necessarily become like the big time target that he's been throughout the season.
I'm going to predict both play. I'm going to predict Jeremiah Smith plays as normal, and I'm going to predict Carnell Tate is a little more limited situational. We'll see. But I think as we sit here Wednesday, there's a few days before kickoff, so things can change. But I think they're both on track to play and will attempt to play. And unless something weird happens in warmups where they just can't go, I think we'll see them out there in some capacity on Saturday, with Smith probably being a little – because my sense has been – this has kind of been confirmed without really being confirmed, but Jeremiah's injury is more of a pain tolerance, pain management. They would not everyone's like scared it's a groin or a hamstring, like something you can consistently just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And there's just not a chance on earth they would have put him out there against UCLA if that were the case, to retweak a hamstring or a groin 2 weeks before the Michigan game. So I think he's dealing. I've said this before. I think he's dealing with some type of like deep tissue bruise, like a deep thigh bruise or something like that. That is just more of a pain management, and obviously which affects your play, but is not something that is necessarily going to just get worse. If you play on it, it's just going to hurt and affect your ability to play. But I think Tate is probably, we're talking more of a calf strain type of thing, which if you continue to play on it will not get better. And so I think there's a little more concern there in terms of further injury. But I think both are going to give it a go. And then we're going to have to ask ourselves the question next week, which is, okay, if they beat Michigan and they go to the Big Ten Championship against Indiana, who they might end up playing a second time anyway, do you just say, you know what, we're going to concede the top seed? No, not even concede the top seed, because you could still win that game without those guys. I mean, it's possible. Right. But we're not going to worry about locking in the 1 seed because we're going to get a bye no matter what, because you don't have to be a conference champion this year. Like, the loser of that game is, if Indiana Ohio State play in the Big Ten Championship game as undefeated teams, the loser of that game is still getting a bye.
You got it.
So it's like, do we even put those guys out there against a team we're probably gonna have to beat later on anyway? We may face them in in our second game, because you may end up in a situation where like they're the 1 and the 4, which I think is probably likely. I think the winner of that game is going to be the 1, and the loser of that game is probably going to be the 4, because they're probably going to reward other teams with the 2, 3. Now maybe not. Maybe the loser of that game can get the 3. But I think they're going to give the SEC champion the especially if it's Georgia, the 2, or Texas A&M. I'm sorry, Texas A&M or Georgia, the 2, and then it's like, okay, maybe the 3 or the 4. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting question we talk about next week. But and if Ohio State doesn't win, it's kind of a moot point. But so that's kind of how I see it. But that's obviously going to be the biggest game of the week. But here's another big one: 3:30 p.m. on CBS. Oregon at Washington. Number 6 Oregon, moving up a little bit. 10-1, 7-1 in the Big Ten, 8-3 Washington, 5-3 in the Big Ten. I think the committee sent a message this week to Washington that said, doesn't matter if you win this weekend, you're not getting in, or they would have had them ranked somewhere. If you would have seen them sneak in at 21 or 22, I think the committee would have been saying, well, if you beat Oregon this weekend, we're going to give you a real look. I think they kind of said, nope, not going to happen with that ranking. Yet Washington I think they opened like a 7.5 point underdog. I think it's down to 6.5 now. This seems scary for Oregon. Like, in my rankings, which don't mean anything, Oregon gets in no matter what. I don't know if the committee sees it that way. I really don't know if the committee sees it that way. And so what are you thinking here for Oregon? Do they have to win this game?
I think they do. I really do. I agree with you. I think the committee is kind of sending a signal that they're not impressed with Oregon, even though they defeated a ranked USC team last week. USC is still in the rankings. I know we'll talk about them in a little bit. I just think that Oregon, for whatever reason, is not necessarily considered a lock. So if you're Oregon, in the back of your mind, you have to be thinking, we win this game and we're not only in, but we're hosting one of the first round playoff games, which I think is a tremendous thing. As for Washington, it's unfortunate, but you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when Washington lost to Wisconsin. That pretty much, I think, sealed their fate. They've been playing impressively since, and I think Washington, I can't say enough good things about the job that Jed Fish is doing. It's now his program. But yeah, I think that there's been some disappointment in Washington by the fact that Wisconsin game is being held against them, which is why they're not even ranked. But yeah, I think this can be a tremendous game at 3:30.
Yeah, I mean, just an inexplicable loss to Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
And if they hadn't done that, and they were up 10-0 in that game. They were up 10-0 in a monsoon against a team that couldn't throw a forward pass. and didn't come out of that with a win. And if they had come out of that with a win, we'd be sitting here talking about if Washington can win this football game, how they are a lock to make the playoff. And boy, that's gonna sting. I think they're gonna look back on that one this offseason and be like, how did we let that happen? Especially if they beat Oregon. But I'm in a situation like, here's a bit of a conspiracy theory. I think one of the big talking points every single week around the rankings has been the Notre Dame Miami situation, and how can Notre Dame be ahead of Miami? Miami beat them head to head. They have the same record. Probably going to finish with the same record, although it's I guess I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say probably. Notre Dame's going to finish 10-2. They're going to beat Stanford. Miami's going to have their hands full with Pitt. That's going to be an interesting game. But I think the committee's nightmare is having to make a decision of one of them's in and one of them's out. I think that's their nightmare. And I think Oregon could be the sacrificial lamb if they lose to Washington, where it's like, well, we're just going to throw Oregon out and put both Miami and Notre Dame in and avoid the controversy. So that's my little conspiracy theory. We'll see. Maybe Alabama will blow it to Auburn, or I don't know if they would penalize, how much they would actually punish Alabama if they made it to the SEC championship game and lost. My guess is they wouldn't. But I think that's something to watch here with Oregon is Oregon certainly needs to take this as a must-win game. Again, for me, they'd be a lock, but I'm not on the committee, so what I say doesn't really matter. So we'll see what happens there. Great rivalry game, also 3:30 Fox Sports 1, Wisconsin, the red-hot Wisconsin Badgers at the ice-cold Minnesota Gophers. Minnesota is just a 1.5-point home favorite here. Oh boy, Vegas is telling us something, Chip.
I know, that's exactly what I was going to say. This is, Vegas is letting anyone's like, hey, this is gambler's choice, I guess. If you want to put money down, it's pretty much like they're basically saying we don't know which Minnesota team is going to show up. And that's not to suggest that Wisconsin all of a sudden is unbeatable. I completely agree with what you said about Washington. They are still offensively challenged. They are starting to show some different things, especially last week against Illinois, being able to run the ball, which I think is, if you're a Wisconsin fan, it's like finally getting back to the way that it used to be. I'm going to go with Minnesota here simply because of the home field. I think that Minnesota, they're inconsistent. The conundrum that PJ Fleck is going to have to figure out sometime this offseason is, all right, why were we so wretchedly horrible on the road this past season? Because that's where all those losses were. The fact that it's at home, I think it'll be a close game, just like most of these rivalry games usually are. But I'm going to take Minnesota in a close one.
I just can't unsee what I've seen out of Wisconsin this year. I have to take Minnesota, and that's such a sucker's line for me, but I am going to have to take Minnesota here at home to finish this thing out. Just when you count out like a PJ Fleck team, they're like, when you think, oh, they're not very good, they go out and they win, and you're like, what? And then you just can't like figure it out. So I think Minnesota will keep us confused and play well and beat Wisconsin. By the way, we should probably make our picks for Oregon, Washington. Who are you picking?
Oh, I'm going to go with Oregon in a close one. I know that Washington, that they've had some players banged up. So is Oregon, though. We were talking earlier about Ohio State with Tate and Smith. Nobody at this stage of the college football season is without some bumps and bruises, some more serious and severe than others. But I am going to go with Oregon in a close one, even though it's on the road.
I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Washington with the upset to cause like maximum CFP chaos.
Okay. I like it.
By a field goal. Okay. 3:30 p.m. Big Ten Network, Penn State at Rutgers. Both are 5-6, 2-6 in the Big Ten. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the year? Winners going to a bowl game. Losers probably not. 13.5-point road favorite for Penn State. Who you got, Chip?
I'm gonna go with Penn State just because we talked about it on a previous episode. I think Penn State now has figured out the best thing that we can do for this team is just run the ball. It doesn't have to be flashy or creative. I know that the coaching rumors are percolating. I can't help but think, Terry Smith, this can only help his candidacy. I don't know how serious his candidacy is, but I do think that Penn State, they're going to rely on their two-headed monster at running back. And Rutgers, I'm going to give them credit. I think Rutgers, unlike Wisconsin, Wisconsin knew that they had a difficult schedule. So did Rutgers, but Rutgers, they won almost every game. The heartbreaking loss for them that they'll look back on was that loss at Minnesota, where, it was, if they had won that one, they'd have bowl eligibility, but I think they're going to be in the outside looking in. But I think Penn State gets to 6-6. Then it depends on, all right, what are we doing for the bowl game?
I think Penn State's going to win big. I think they're going to cover. I think they're going to win comfortably. I think it's going to be the last game for a lot of these kids. Despite winning and going to a bowl game, I think your Katron Allens and Nick Singletons may not play in that bowl game. So I think a lot of those kids may look at this as their final game. They want to go out the right way, and they want to pass off to the young guys the opportunity to play in a postseason game. So I think, and you're right, I think they figured some things out. I think Grunkemeier's gotten more comfortable each week. I think they figured things out like, hey, we have two pretty good running backs. Maybe we should be a run first team. So I think they've figured out a lot of those things on offense, and it's kind of silly they had to get to this point to realize that. But, I don't know. Maybe they got caught up in trying to win Drew Aller a Heisman at the beginning of the year. I don't know. But, I think this is one team's playing really, really well right now, which is Penn State. The other team just lost to Ohio State by 32 points without Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, or any semblance of a game plan that was indicative of trying to create explosive plays. So this Rutgers defense is all-time bad for that program, for Greg Schiano. It's probably the worst defense Greg Schiano's ever had. And I'm going back, all the way back. So I think Penn State's gonna handle this one pretty easily. 7 p.m. Fox Sports 1, Maryland at Michigan State. Michigan State a 3.5-point favorite. Does Michigan State get its first and only Big Ten win of the season?
I'm going with the Spartans. I think that I'm not necessarily fully committed to being on the Jonathan Smith bandwagon, but I'm going to say that I think Jonathan Smith is the right guy to rebuild this program. And I know it's frustrating if you're a Michigan State fan, but I really do think that close call last week against Iowa, I think that to me that's evidence that the team is still playing hard for Jonathan Smith. And conversely, I think Maryland, all right, I understand the rationale for keeping Mike Loxley. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. So I just think if you're Maryland and you're going into the offseason, you have to it's beyond a parody by this point. The fact that you have been a member now of this conference for over 10 years and you still can't run the ball effectively. You still can't stop the run effectively. And those are two staples of playing football within the Big Ten Conference. I think Michigan State is further along, albeit not on the defensive side, but I think that they are further along in that regard. So I think Michigan State closes out, focuses their transfer portal dollars on defensive talent in the portal. And then if you're Maryland, I think you have to really kind of focus on what I just said a moment ago, running the ball and improving on the defense.
Yeah, I agree. I think Michigan State's going to win. And you kind of hit it pretty early there in your talking points, which was I see one team still playing hard in Michigan State. I see another team that's mailed it in. And so I think the team that's playing hard is Michigan State. And I think that'll carry over to Saturday and a win there. I would make a move if I were Maryland. I don't know if they're going to. We've kind of played devil's advocate on that of do you want to be in this hiring cycle? And is that why? But at some point you got to rip the Band-Aid off. This is just, how many years have they done this? The hot start and then just sputtering to the finish. I think Malik Washington, you've got a real talent there at quarterback. And I just think you got to be careful with that. I don't think in this day and age players are going to stick around and play on really bad teams where they are basically getting teed off on by defenses every week because you can't run the ball and you just put everything on their shoulders. And I think they've got to I would make a move. And obviously the first thing would be to sit down with Malik Washington, with the new coach, and be like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. We need you to stay. Here's a blank check of NIL dollars. And let's figure this thing out and get this thing moving back in the right direction. But we'll see what happens. Maybe an embarrassing loss to Michigan State would be enough to move the needle there. I don't know. But it seems like he's safe for another year. But we'll see. 7:30 p.m. NBC. Great rivalry. Unfortunately, I don't know how competitive it's going to be this year, but we'll see. I mean, we've seen some weird things in that rivalry. That's UCLA at USC. 3-8 UCLA. 8-3 number 17 USC. Before we get into our prediction there, USC only dropped to 17. That tells me, and we thought, if they lost to Oregon, they were probably out. And they lost pretty convincingly. Oregon was generally in control of that game, really just about the entire way. But they only dropped USC to 17. That tells me the committee is telling USC, post a 9-3, and we'll see what happens, because you're still in range at 17. If enough things get weird, you are still in range there. Am I reading too much into their ranking?
No, I think what I not only agree with what you said, but it's also telling me that they are impressed by the decisive win that they had at home versus Michigan, right? Because Michigan, we were just talking about Maryland. All right, Michigan, that's who they played last week. You can't tell me that you're that impressed by Michigan defeating Maryland. What you're saying is, all right, Michigan, hey, we're going to kind of dangle this carrot out in front of you. If you beat Ohio State, that's your ticket in, because you just beat the number one team in the country. So conversely, if you're USC, the fact that they have this newfound respect for Michigan, it's like you have to be the beneficiaries of that. And even though I agree with you that USC lost decisively at Oregon, they're not being punished for it. Oregon's not being rewarded for it, but it's just kind of the bizarre logic. You referenced, I know that a lot of people, this is a Big Ten podcast, but a lot of people are just kind of up in arms about the way everything is going with Notre Dame and Miami and all that. And it's going to sort itself out over the next couple of weeks. But getting back to this, I think USC, if they win decisively against UCLA, there's kind of like channeling my Jim Carrey. You're saying there's a chance. Okay. That's kind of what the committee is kind of implying to them. I'm going to go with USC here.
Yeah, I think USC is going to roll. We've talked about the UCLA roller coaster this year. It's back down. They've looked not great the last several weeks, and I don't see them pulling this off. And USC again should have a little bit more motivation now. I think if they had dropped into the 20s, you're talking about being out. I think the fact that they watched the ranking show on Tuesday, and they're like, oh, wow. And all these other teams are going to have to play rivalry games this weekend. Some of these teams might have to play 2 more games with conference championship games, things like that are going to give other teams losses. And you look around and you're like, hey, we can still do this. So I think that's going to give USC the motivation they need, and I think they're going to win big.
Something else just came to mind is that Nico was injured against Washington, and I haven't seen anything about his availability. And
I don't know what the point would be at this point for UCLA.
Yeah, exactly. If you're Nico, okay. I mean, he was pretty much a one-man offense anyway. And it's like, hey, regroup, get ready for next year with a new coaching staff. I'm still very much a proponent, by the way, of keeping Tim Skipper on the staff in some capacity, as well as Jerry Neuheisel. Yeah, I think both should be, because I think the job that they did turning what looked like a hopeless situation mid-season, that 3-game winning streak, it was a spark. It was a talk of college football. But I'll tell you what, I think UCLA, I mean, there are a lot of things that need to be fixed. And the longer that they prolong this coaching search, I know I sound like a broken record, but they've got to be able to hit that transfer portal aggressively, and they've got to be able to sell a future to the recruits that they're talking to.
Yeah, no question. No question about that. All right. So last game of the weekend, 7:30 p.m. on Fox, Northwestern at Illinois. Both teams bowl eligible. Both teams 4-4 in the Big Ten. Illinois has sort of sputtered lately, while Northwestern has played some pretty good football down the stretch. Illinois is a 6.5-point home favorite. Upset alert for the Fighting Illini, Chip?
I think they should be. Absolutely. I think Northwestern, I mean, credit to David Braun.
Yes.
Two bowl games in 3 seasons. And I freely admit, I thought Northwestern was going to be vying for, one of the basement, dwellings in the Big Ten. The fact that he got this team to 6 wins. And I understand why a couple weeks ago, why David Braun was so emotional after the close loss to Michigan, because they had that game. I mean, like the fact that they weren't able to seal the deal, even so, like that, it just kind of goes to show that coaching does still matter. It's not just all about, like who has the deepest pocketbook and can shell out for talent. I mean, you have to be able to get your guys to play, and David Braun can do that. Conversely, I think Illinois, the fact that it's a home game, I think that Brett Bielema, there has to just be so much embarrassment and frustration with the performance of last week. So I'm going to go with Illinois in a close one, but I agree with you. I think they definitely need to be on upset alert against the Wildcats.
I really want to pick Northwestern here, but I'm not going to. I just don't have the guts. I think the Washington pick took it all out of me. I've got no guts left after the Washington pick. So, but you look at the way these two teams are playing right now, and you think Northwestern's going to win the game, to be honest. But I just think Bielema will rally the troops here, senior day, all that good stuff, and get this win. But I'm not super confident in it. I'm really kind of disappointed in how Illinois has played down the stretch here this season. But I think they'll figure this one out and pull out a close one. But I'm not going to be stunned if Northwestern wins this game. So that'll be the nightcap. Everyone will probably be watching the Iron Bowl at that point anyway. But we'll see. Maybe Illinois goes 8-4, and then just whips some 9-3 SEC team in a bowl game that people were clamoring to make the playoff and beat Vanderbilt or something in a bowl game. But we'll see. Any parting thoughts here, Chip? We're about 40 minutes into this thing, and
want to wish you and your family and loved ones happy Thanksgiving. I know that we talked about this off air that neither of us are traveling, but for any of our viewers and listeners that are going to be traveling, safe travels. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And if you're going to any games, bundle up, because winter is here. It is definitely, it is going to be chilly pretty much everywhere throughout the Midwest where these games are going to be played. I have to confess, I haven't looked to see what it's going to be out when USC and UCLA play, but happy Thanksgiving, and just, hey, enjoy Black Friday. Enjoy, Mark, we talked about, like the best day, the day after Thanksgiving, sitting on the couch or, wherever with a, plate of leftovers or a turkey sandwich. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it's like literally Thursday, Friday this week might be my favorite 48-hour period of the calendar year. I love it. I love Thanksgiving, and I love the sports that are on and everything else.
Yeah.
It's really one of my. For me, I prefer this over Christmas. It's just,
this is
an old guy. When I was a kid, it's different, but like as an old guy, like it just it's almost unbeatable.
Oh no, this is my brother-in-law's favorite holiday. Not just because of the meal. It is definitely everything that you just said. It's like he told me years ago. He's like, Chip, nothing better than the football games on, and getting family around, and all of that. I agree. I definitely think Thanksgiving that's why I'm so hostile towards people that like start pushing Christmas stuff at me when it's October.
Yeah.
That's why it's like, give Thanksgiving its moment in the sun.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, it doesn't, we've got plenty of time to sing Christmas carols and do all that stuff.
Well said. All right, guys, we appreciate everyone watching and listening. Enjoy rivalry weekend. Good luck to your respective teams, because there's nothing worse than losing to your rival, kind of like going into the off season. It's the longest off season when that happens. So good luck to everyone's teams. And thank you again for watching and listening. And we'll be back to recap all the action on Monday and look ahead to championship week.